The moment you stop needing people's approval, they start desperately seeking yours. That's not motivational fluff. That's behavioral psychology. And the Stoics figured it out 2,000 years before any self-help guru existed. In the next 12 minutes, you're going to learn 5 Stoic moves, not theories, not vague philosophy, actual psychological strategies that shift how people treat you, how they think about you, and how much they value your presence. These aren't about becoming cold or cruel. They're about becoming someone who simply cannot be taken for granted. Let's get into it. Here's something most people never realize. Availability destroys value, not because people are malicious, but because of a deeply wired psychological mechanism called the scarcity heuristic. The brain automatically assigns higher value to things that are harder to access. This isn't opinion, it's documented behavioral economics. The same wine, when told it costs $90 versus $10, literally tastes better to people in blind studies. The same person, when they're always available, always responsive, always accommodating, gets treated like background noise. The Stoics understood this intuitively. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations about the discipline of not overextending yourself socially, about being selective with your time as an act of self-respect, not arrogance. Epictetus, who started life as a literal slave, taught that your freedom lives in what you choose to engage with. You control your attention, and where your attention goes, so does your value. Here's the real-world version. Think about someone in your life, a colleague, a friend, maybe even a romantic partner who used to be constantly available. They'd answer every text within seconds. They'd show up to every event. They'd bend their schedule to fit yours. And somewhere along the way, you stopped thinking much about them. Not because you're a bad person, because your brain stopped assigning effort and value to the connection. It became automatic, frictionless, and frictionless things don't feel precious. Now think about someone who's genuinely busy, selective, and occasionally unavailable. When they do show up, you pay attention. When they respond, it means something. Their yes carries weight because you know they could easily say no. A practical move: you don't need to fake being busy. You need to actually prioritize yourself. Stop responding to every message immediately. Stop attending every social obligation out of guilt. Build a life so full of meaningful work and intention that your availability becomes a genuine commodity. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said it directly. It is not that I have courage to face death. It is that I have learned not to place excessive value on things outside my control. One of the most dangerous things you can overvalue is someone else's opinion of your accessibility. Start treating your time like a resource you can't get back because you can't. When you do that authentically, people feel it. They stop expecting you to always be there. And the moment they stop expecting it, they start appreciating it. Now here's the counterintuitive one. The one most people argue with until they experience it themselves. The less you react to people's behavior, the more power you hold in every interaction. This isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending nothing matters. The Stoics were crystal clear on this distinction, and it's a distinction most modern interpretations get completely wrong. Stoicism is not emotional numbness. It is emotional sovereignty. It's the difference between a fire that's out of control and a forge, same heat, entirely different result. Marcus Aurelius dealt with constant betrayal, political backstabbing, military failures, and personal tragedy. He lost multiple children. He was surrounded by people who flattered him to his face and plotted against him behind his back. And his response, documented in his private journals, the Meditations, was never blind rage or dramatic reaction. It was measured, clear-eyed, and decisive. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Here's what happens neurologically when you overreact. Research from the Journal of Experimental Psychology shows that emotional reactivity signals to others that they have leverage over you. When you get visibly upset, defensive, or desperate to explain yourself, you're essentially broadcasting, "Your opinion of me controls my internal state." And once someone knows they can move your emotional needle, consciously or not, they will use that. Every time. Think about the people in your life who command the most natural respect. Not feared, respected. Chances are they don't explode when criticized. They don't collapse when someone withdraws approval. They don't over-explain their decisions or chase validation after making a choice. When someone disrespects them, there's no dramatic confrontation, there's just a quiet recalibration. A subtle withdrawal of energy. A door that gently, permanently closes. That's the Stoic indifference frame. And it is devastating to people who expect you to chase them. The practical move. The next time someone does something that would normally pull a strong emotional reaction from you, pause. Take what the Stoics called the view from above. Ask yourself, in 5 years, does this interaction define my life or theirs? Then respond from logic, not from the wound. Here's the dark psychology angle. People who take you for granted are almost always testing, consciously or not, whether you'll tolerate it. The moment you stop tolerating it without making it a scene, without begging, without over-explaining, you completely rewrite the power dynamic. Your non-reaction becomes louder than any argument you could have made. Most people think they need to have a conversation about their boundaries, a heart-to-heart, an explanation of their feelings, a negotiation. The Stoics would call that a waste of breath. Here's the psychological insight: people don't respect your stated limits. They respect the limits they discover you actually enforce. There's a well-documented psychological pattern called intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. When someone occasionally crosses your boundaries and sometimes faces a consequence and other times doesn't, their brain becomes hooked on testing the inconsistency. They're not even consciously trying to disrespect you. Their brain is pattern-seeking, and the pattern it found is, the rules here are negotiable. The Stoics operated on a completely different model. Epictetus wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be and then do accordingly." Not tell others what you would be, not negotiate what you would be, decide privately then act accordingly. The announcement is irrelevant, the action is everything. Here's a real example that illustrates this perfectly. Cato the Younger, one of the most respected Stoic figures of the Roman Republic, was legendary not for his speeches but for his refusals. When Julius Caesar offered him a political alliance that would have made him enormously powerful and wealthy, Cato didn't write a long letter explaining his values. He simply said no, repeatedly, calmly, without drama. Caesar reportedly feared Cato more than any enemy general, not because Cato was loud, but because his standards were absolute. You couldn't negotiate with him, you couldn't manipulate him. There was no crack in the wall to push through. That kind of person does not get taken for granted. Not because they're aggressive, but because everyone in the room has already figured out where the floor is. The practical move: audit your current relationships. Where are you repeatedly accepting treatment that you've privately decided you won't accept? The pattern is always the same: you tolerate, you hint, you finally say something, nothing changes, you tolerate again. Break the pattern at the behavioral level, not the verbal one. Stop showing up for people who never show up for you. Stop making yourself available after you've been repeatedly deprioritized. Not as punishment, as a simple, clean recalibration of standards. No announcement, no emotional speech, just a different behavior. The moment people notice your actions have changed without warning, without drama, they feel the weight of your standards in a way that words could never create. Because words are easily dismissed. Actions force a reckoning. This section is about something deeper than strategy. It's about the psychological root of why people get taken for granted in the first place. And here it is. People take you for granted when your sense of self is partially outsourced to them. When your confidence fluctuates based on whether someone texts you back. When your mood is determined by how your boss responded to your idea. When you need someone to acknowledge your effort before you feel like the effort was worth it. You have handed that person a remote control to your inner life. And people, even good people, abuse remote controls they're handed. The Stoics called this the primary philosophical problem. Epictetus built his entire framework around one central distinction: things within your control and things outside it. Your judgments, your desires, your responses, yours. Everything else, other people's opinions, their behavior, their reactions, not yours. The goal wasn't to become a robot. It was to build an identity that doesn't require external maintenance. Here's the research that backs this up with modern science. Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas has spent decades studying self-compassion and identity stability. Her findings consistently show that people with a stable internal identity, what she calls a secure base of self, are significantly less vulnerable to social manipulation, less likely to tolerate chronic disrespect, and paradoxically more liked and respected by others. Not less. More, because security is deeply attractive, neediness is deeply repelling. Think about Theodore Roosevelt, someone who embodied Stoic identity principles without ever labeling it philosophy. After losing his wife and his mother on the same day, after brutal political defeats, after being shot during a campaign speech, and choosing to finish the speech before going to the hospital, the man operated from an identity that was simply not available for negotiation. He wasn't performing toughness. He had built something internal that circumstances couldn't dismantle. That kind of person does not spend time managing other people's perceptions of them. They don't chase clarity about where they stand in relationships. They don't shrink themselves to make others comfortable. And because of that, people naturally orbit them differently. The practical move: get brutally honest about which parts of your self-esteem currently depend on external feedback. Your career validation, Does it live inside you or in your boss's praise? Your value in friendships, do you know it internally or do you need to be constantly included to feel it? Your romantic worth, is it yours or is it borrowed from whoever is currently paying attention to you? Start a daily practice, the Stoics called it the morning meditation, where you explicitly remind yourself of your values, your capabilities, and your direction. Not as affirmations, as inventory. You are taking stock of who you are, independent of who is watching. When you do this consistently, something fascinating happens. You stop seeking approval in micro ways you weren't even aware of. The slight desperation leaves your voice. The over-explaining stops. And people around you begin to sense that you are not available to be diminished. This is the final move, and it might be the most powerful, because it requires patience, which is the rarest resource in a world of instant reactions and constant emotional urgency. The Stoic long game is this: become so focused on your own growth and mission that taking you for granted becomes impossible, because you have simply outgrown the people and situations that once minimized you. This is not passive. This is not wait and see. This is one of the most aggressive strategies you can deploy. It's just measured in years instead of moments. Here's the story that makes this viscerally clear. Before Epictetus was a philosopher, before he ran his own school, before his teachings were recorded and survived 2,000 years, he was a slave. Literally owned by a cruel master named Epaphroditos, who reportedly broke Epictetus's leg as a demonstration of power. According to the accounts, Epictetus calmly warned his master that the bone would break if he kept twisting. It broke. And Epictetus said simply, "Did I not tell you?" He didn't rage. He didn't beg. He didn't collapse. He continued to develop his mind in the conditions that existed. And he eventually became one of the most influential philosophers in human history, taught Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on earth, through his writings. His enslaver, forgotten, a footnote, that is the long game. Modern research on what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, studied extensively by Dr. Richard Tedeschi at UNC Charlotte, shows that the people who emerge from being undervalued, marginalized, and taken for granted with the most strength are not the ones who fought loudest in the moment. They are the ones who redirected that energy inward into skill development, into clarity of purpose, into building something that spoke for itself. There is a business principle that mirrors this exactly. Warren Buffett, who has studied human behavior as much as financial markets, operates entirely on the Stoic long game. He doesn't respond to critics. He doesn't chase short-term approval from shareholders. He doesn't react to market noise. He compounds, quietly, consistently over decades. And the result is that people who once dismissed him have spent careers trying to explain themselves. The practical move: identify the area of your life where you've been most consistently undervalued. Now ask, if I spent the next 12 months investing deeply in that specific area, my skills, my knowledge, my network, my output, what would be undeniable about me by the end of those 12 months? The Stoics had a concept called amor fati, love of fate, not tolerance of it, not acceptance of it, love. The idea being that every obstacle, every dismissal, every person who underestimated you is fuel, if you choose to use it that way. People cannot take for granted someone who is visibly, consistently, silently building something extraordinary, because eventually you won't be in the same room anymore. You'll have moved into rooms they're trying to get access to, and they will remember too late the person they made the mistake of overlooking. The Stoics played for eternity. Marcus Aurelius wrote journals knowing nobody would ever read them, just to become better. Epictetus built a philosophy in chains. Seneca wrote from exile. None of them needed the validation of their current circumstances. They invested in something longer than the moment. So should you. If this hit differently, if something in these 5 moves made you realize you've been playing a smaller game than you're capable of, then you're exactly who this channel exists for. Mindset Master covers stoicism, dark psychology, and wealth mindset every single week. Real insights, no fluff, no performance. Just the strategies that actually shift how you think and how you operate. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because the next video is already going to change something you thought you understood about yourself. Don't miss it. Here's the truth the Stoics knew and most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You are not taken for granted by accident. It is the result of a pattern of availability without selectivity, reaction without sovereignty, words without standards, identity without foundation, and urgency without patience. Every single one of those patterns is reversible, starting today, not with a dramatic announcement, not with a confrontation, with a decision, quiet, private, and absolute, to become someone that cannot be overlooked. Marcus Aurelius ended a day like any other by writing in his journal, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." Stop explaining yourself to people who don't value you. Stop waiting for circumstances to change. Stop tolerating what you've already decided you won't accept. Make the move. Today. Stoicism, Stoic mindset. Stop being taken for granted, dark psychology, Sigma mindset. Stoic habits, mental strength, emotional intelligence, Stoic philosophy, how to gain respect, wealth mindset, Stoic wisdom, mindset mastery, self-discipline, Stoic principles description. Are you tired of being overlooked, undervalued, and taken for granted? In this video, Mindset Master reveals 5 powerful Stoic moves, backed by real history, behavioral psychology, and dark psychology insights, that completely shift how people treat you. From the withdrawal principle to the Stoic long game, these aren't vague theories. They're actionable strategies used by Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and modern high-performers. Whether you're dealing with toxic relationships, workplace disrespect, or simply feeling invisible, these Stoic habits will help you reclaim your power and command genuine respect. No emotional outbursts, no desperate explanations, just quiet, unshakable self-mastery. If you're serious about developing a Sigma mindset, Stoic wisdom, and real mental strength, this is your blueprint. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for weekly content on Stoicism, dark psychology, and wealth mindset. Your transformation starts now.